is 1 in 3 teenagers. Australians spend an estimated $473 was spent on non-surgical cosmetic procedures to things such as fillers and Botox. $1 billion. The Australian College of Cosmetic Surgery reports that more than a third of Australians are considering cosmetic surgery within the next 10 years. Australians can also be dissatisfied with their jobs. So some statistics indicate that up to 76% of employees are dissatisfied with some aspect of their job, with the most commonly cited issues being pay, job security, and an interesting work. Finally, relationships are not new. In 2022, Relationships Australia published a report that stated that 1 in 2 Australians are dissatisfied with their relationships. 1 in 2. Since 50% of relationships, how many struggle? And when you make people receptive to the message that you want to share with them. And to be protected from predators. So if we were fostering the wealthy. The half-sent sheep notice that the pastures on the other side of the fence is a little bit greener, yet they trust that the shepherd is not preventing them from accessing some food that they need. They trust that the shepherd's intentions towards them is to provide then we would be able to protect ourselves from the pervasive dissatisfaction by saying, because the Lord is my shepherd, I know that I have everything I need. I believe that we are dissatisfied not only because of the income death 4 times as well, and thick darkness. So imagine walking through here in deep darkness. The author of the psalm wants to communicate that there is real danger when we find ourselves here. This is a place where anxiety, fear, distress, and desperation are experienced because evil will befall you. Death is likely, hence its name. This is a place of real danger, whether spiritually, physically, or emotionally. These are the valleys where you or a loved one has been given a devastating prognosis. These are the valleys where you find yourself in catastrophe. These are the valleys where evil harms the most vulnerable and defenseless. These are the valleys where the weight of your struggles crushes the life out of you. So, how can one say that they have everything they need when they find themselves in these places? To answer the question, we need to pay attention to some important wording in this verse. So in verse 3, we read, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." Notice the reason why we fear no evil. Pay attention to the way the sentence has been constructed. It says, "You are with me, so I will fear no evil." It doesn't say, "I am with you, so I won't fear evil." The subject is you, God, the Good Shepherd. We don't fear because God is with us, not because we are with God. If our confidence to get through the valley was dependent on us staying with God, we would all be doomed. All of us have rebellious spirits, and like Barak the sheep in the children's story, we would take off believing we could make it on our own. Who needs directions? We know where we're going, and off we would go straight into peril. While we travel through the valleys, we can be confident that God is always with us. There is no danger that He will abandon us while we are in the valley.
The danger is in the temptation. The danger is that in temptation and trial, we will become discouraged and fail to notice his presence. Then we will despair as we attempt to navigate the valley in our own strength and wisdom. Friends, we do not have to fear because God is with us. He is the one who holds us fast when our strength gives way, when we lose hope, when we stumble. We don't have to fear that God is going to leave us or forget about us. He's merciful to us. He loves us with a faithful and enduring love, and He's always ready to help us when we need it. We may not see God because of the darkness of the valley, but we know that He is with us, directing us one step at a time with His rod and His staff. And so even in the valley of the shadow of death, we have everything we need. There is another reason we can fight off discontentment when we find ourselves in the valley. And that's in the beginning of the verse where we read, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." What does "through" specify? A definition I found states that "through" indicates movement into one side and out of the other side of an opening, channel, or location. This means that we are not stuck in the valley of deep darkness. We are moving from one side of the valley to the other side, where we will experience green pastures and still waters once again. It is a temporary situation we find ourselves in, rather than a permanent state. We may not want to be here, but we can be content in the fact that the Good Shepherd is guiding us to a better place. Though you are suffering, God will bring you through. Though you feel lost, God will bring you through. Though you are in darkness, God will bring you through. Though you can see the shadow of death, God will bring you through. And what more could we want when we find ourselves in these perilous situations than the reassurance that for every though we experience in life, with God, there will always be a through. Some of you may be thinking that to be satisfied, you need more than just the bare necessities. You may recognize that you have food, water, shelter, a source of income, but you want more. You may be wondering if following Christ means that you will always be missing something. You may have everything you need, but what about everything you want? The first 4 verses of the psalm indicate a sense of contentment from the reassurance that God leads us and protects us so that our needs are met. The last 2 verses of Psalm 23, though, are slightly different. The psalm continues to expand the theme that God provides for us, but what He provides evolves as He moves away from the imagery of the shepherd. If you look at verse 5, it says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over." In verse 5, we have reassurance that God continues to provide for us in spite of having people actively trying to harm us. We must not fear that God is powerless against Satan and his schemes. Yes, we live in a world filled with evil, and yes, we're not immune to the consequences of the actions of others who may wish to harm us. Yet, despite these realities, God continues to faithfully care for us. But He doesn't just look after us, He does so abundantly. The mention of the table alludes to covenantal kindness. Do you remember when King David told Jonathan's son that he would eat at his table always? David didn't just spare the life of Jonathan's son. He also just didn't provide some basic provision for him. Rather, he went above and beyond in showing kindness to Jonathan's son. Likewise, God is not doing the bare minimum for us. He's not providing us with the bare necessities, just enough to keep us from becoming cold or hungry. Rather, He exceeds our expectations. We see this when we read the phrases, "You anoint my head with oil, and my cup runs over." In Hebrew, to anoint also means to prosper or to satisfy someone. Similarly, for the cup to run over, it means that God is providing more than enough, more than it's needed. Both of these together indicate that God doesn't just provide enough to meet our needs, but He blesses us with an abundance of blessings. So if you fear that God may be keeping us in a place where only our basic needs are being met, as if we were living on a measly government pension, remember that this is not what David depicts here. David depicts God providing an overabundance of blessings that bring pleasure and delight. So how could anyone need anything more? Verse 6 of Psalm 23 is one of my favorite verses. The Hebrew word translated as the Hebrew word translated as follows is radaf, which actually means to run after, to chase, or to pursue. This verb indicates real intent to persevere in chasing after someone. However, while radaf is usually associated with hostile intent, in this case, it is the complete opposite. According to David, we are being chased not by God's punishments, as one might expect, but by His goodness and mercy. Again, notice the wording. It doesn't say that we are following goodness and mercy, which would be reasonable. You may hear of people who are chasing excellence or greatness, and likewise, some people may desire to chase goodness and mercy. And this would be a noble goal. However, the verse does not say that we seek goodness and mercy. If the phrase said, "Surely I will follow goodness and mercy all the days of my life," it would indicate that we are responsible for attaining them. Which would mean that if at any point in time we stumble, we take a detour, we become tired and stop following them, then goodness and mercy may disappear from our sights, never to be found again. Or perhaps we would find that we are forever pursuing them, but never able to do enough to reach them. However, because goodness and mercy are following us, there is no way to escape them. We may turn left or right, and they will be following us. We may run faster, and they will be following us. We may come to a stop, yet goodness and mercy will still be there. There is nothing we can do that will stop God's faithful love and goodness from running after us. What more could we want than to know that God's favor is not dependent on anything we do? The single antidote to discontentment is learning that God is enough, no matter what our circumstances may be. Whether we are humbly grazing on grass like sheep or feasting at the king's table, we have what we need because God is with us. Whether we are traveling along quiet waters or we are facing a precarious journey through dangerous valleys, we have what we need because God is with us. There is nothing that will bring us more satisfaction than trusting that God, who gave His life for us, is always with us, supplying our needs, loving us faithfully, calling us back whenever we wander off, inviting us to dwell with Him forever. How could we ask for more? Instead of a closing hymn, I'd like to share with you a song by a choir that I found on Psalm 23. And I just pray that you reflect on the words and ask God to help you fight any discontentment you may be experiencing in your life. I don't stand here um, claiming to have achieved ultimate fulfillment, but I do think it is a challenge we should all be consciously aware of. So I hope you enjoy this song.